Up next is the New England Patriots, and talk about a team who gives us a lot to cover on this NFL team preview. I think out of all the teams so far, all the notes that I have written down, they are by far, they take up the biggest spot on my computer screen, that's for sure. And obviously, when you think about the Patriots and you think about the transitions made to this season, you think about Mike Vrabel, who had a year off after coaching the Titans. I was very perplexed that he was ever let go by the Titans as their head coach. I thought he was a phenomenal leader, the kind of guy you would want in your locker room, the players respect, right? Former Super Bowl champion, linebacker, tough guy, knows football, knows how to coach up a defense, knows how to create a culture. See ya. The Titans didn't want Mike Vrabel for some reason, but what a perfect situation for the New England Patriots to bring in Vrabel to lead their team after a pretty terrible season from Gerard Mayo, also a former defensive player for the Patriots. That didn't work out very well last year. Of course, he wasn't dealing with, he didn't have as many weapons and talent on his roster as Vrabel will have this year. We'll get to that in a second. But, part of that is on the coach, right? To push for it, to, vouch for certain guys, also to coach up certain guys. And I have all the faith in the world in Vrabel. He was one of my favorite coaches in the NFL when he was with the Titans. He's very much like a Pete Carroll, Dan Campbell, Kevin O'Connell type of guy. He's a culture changer, top 10 coach for sure for me, probably top 5 for me. And so this is a big upgrade for New England. They also brought in Josh McDaniels, former offensive coordinator for the Patriots when they were winning Super Bowls with Tom Brady. They also brought in Terrell Williams as defensive coordinator, who served over there with Tennessee and Mike Vrabel during their tenure. So they have a good connection, a pass together. I'm sure they have the same mentality and perspective about how a defense should be run. So there's some nice continuity there, especially for a defense that has a lot of talent that needs to play better. And they did quite a few things to amplify their possibilities on offense, and we'll get to that in a second too. I love that Vrabel, by the way, was getting into like scraps and the practice, right? He got like a bloody nose or bloody something on his face. I just have little doubt that he's going to refine their operation, which was extremely mistake prone last season. And he'll certainly elevate their defense and overall their winning ability, their ability against the spread. And hopefully, but at this point, Josh McDaniels realizes that being an offensive coordinator is where you belong, Josh. Like you're not a coach. You're not a head coach in the NFL. You're an offensive coordinator. So all that to say, they were 4-13 last year. I promise you, they will not be 4-13 this season. They will be better than that. Will they go to the playoffs? Will they make like a deep run and double digit wins in their schedule? There are a lot of bullish analysts on the Patriots this season coming into this season. I'm not quite as bullish as all of them yet, but I'm seeing obvious improvement will be coming. So let's get to all of the things they did during the offseason and what they did last year. In 2024, they were one of the most mistake prone offenses in the NFL, bottom 5 in nearly every category, average run offense, 18th overall. Plenty of reasons to believe they will improve. But, if last year was an indication of what this offense is going to be, that's not good. Right now, again, so many changes. It's almost impossible for it to be the same. Drake May is going to be at the helm for year 2. He was good, not great last year, but lots of sacks, right? Their offense was 26th in sack rate allowance and very limited options, right? May just didn't, in my opinion, the most shallow wide receiver crew in the NFL. Relied a lot on Hunter Henry, who got 97 targets last season as a tight end. That's pretty rare, and Hunter Henry did a good job with most of those targets, but it's a lot for a tight end who is going to appreciate that they brought in Stephon Diggs, one of the bigger acquisitions of the NFL offseason. Stephon Diggs was with Houston last season, the Bills before that. Now he is back in the AFC East with the New England Patriots. He looks rejuvenated despite that weird boat, cocaine thing going on. It doesn't seem like many were that bothered by that. He looked good in practice, at least. He didn't play at all in the preseason, but Vrabel says he will be ready to go week one. They also made some really big moves on their offensive line. They brought over Morgan Moses, previously played with Baltimore and other teams. Now he's not a spring chicken anymore, but still a formidable lineman, one of the better ones in the league still at this point. They also drafted Will Campbell, fourth overall from LSU, to fortify that offensive line. So major upgrades on their O line. And then, of course, they drafted Trayvon Henderson, a running back from Ohio State, who is a major playmaker. Ramondre Stevenson, their starting running back, is a little banged up heading into week one. They think he's going to play, but if he can't, we might see some Trayvon Henderson. And, we haven't seen much of him yet, but from what we have seen and from his history, that's a good pickup for the Patriots and another playmaker. They just need more playmakers in this offense, right? They also got a wide receiver from Washington State, Kyle Williams, in the draft. Again, this is just more about depth. They still have a relatively shallow wide receiver crew, but better, right? This is better. You don't have to go to Hunter Henry every time. You got Stephon Diggs. Maybe you have a new playmaker out of the black. Jeez, I'm trying to talk really fast because there's a lot to say about the Patriots. Maybe a new playmaker out of the backfield, and Trayvon Henderson, but still a big TBD on this offense, right? Drake May is still a new quarterback in the NFL, through a lot of tribulation in his first year starting. Now he gets another shot. Anticipation is there, right? There's that feeling in the air like things are going to turn around, but now there's also kind of pressure, right? Because it's still on you as the quarterback to bring that to fruition. Defense was better than the offense, but still below average across the board, except for on pass defense. I mean, overall, they're like a 13th, 14th best unit in the NFL. Really bad at sacks. No team had fewer sacks than the Patriots. Only 4.99% of plays resulted in a sack on defense, but their secondary, took care of that issue most of the time. Pretty good marks across the board, like 13th or better in opponent completion percentage, pass yards, things like that. But needless to say, very mistake-prone unit. Jerod Mayo did not make this defense, or he did not maximize this defense, right? Barely any takeaways. So expecting more from them, especially with a defensive mind and defensive guy like Mike Vrabel. They brought in Milton Williams, probably overpaid him, but defensive tackle from Philadelphia, had some really good performances last year and throughout his career. That should really help the interior of that defensive line, which is a very young unit. They're developing still. Obviously, not a ton of success last season, but there is reason to believe, especially with Vrabel just coaching them up and now some veteran talent coming in, that we can see some major improvements. They also added Robert Spillane and Harold Landry, a linebacker, two veteran linebackers as well. I told you there's a lot to share here. I'm running out of breath with all this information. They also signed Carlton Davis, a cornerback, making one of the better cornerback duos in the NFL, with Christian Rodriguez on the other side. This is only his third year, I believe, coming off injury a year ago. Finally played a season, and we saw what he can do. And he's one of the better ones in the NFL. Carlton Davis, is still a veteran, still very much in his prime. So good pickup for them. They spent money, but they still have a lot of cap freedom, from what I understand. I'm not a big business side of football guy and looking at the salary cap. I know some guys at ESPN didn't assess their offseason moves as highly as others because of the money they spent, but I think this was well placed, and they needed some guys. And if you notice, right, they did draft some depth, but most of their rounds 1 through 4, in fact, I think every one of their draft picks in the first 4 rounds were all offense. But they used the free agency and the back half of the draft to, one, bring in veterans from free agency and then bring up some nice young talent to develop this group. So that's what Vrabel does. We saw him do it in Tennessee. That was an overperforming unit over there defensively. And there were some seasons where, with injuries and everything else, the Titans really didn't have a lot of guys out there, and they were still very formidable against the run. They could get to the quarterback. And obviously with the expectations and the culture there in New England and the fit, right? The comfortable fit. of Vrabel in New England, you can't help but see the upside here. Again, these are all still unknowns, right? These are all still kind of intangibles, but you don't dislike anything that's going on here. One thing that you have to like for the New England Patriots, as I'm finally getting pressured here to finish a team preview in less than 15 minutes. There's so much to share. I'm at about 10:20 right now. We'll get there. But man, this is a lot of changes to the Patriots this offseason. The schedule is easy, plain and simple. One of the easier ones in the NFL. The first 8 games, especially, set them up well. They got at home against Vegas, then at Miami, at home against Pittsburgh and Carolina, then at Buffalo, then at the Saints, at Titans, and then Cleveland. I mean, I'm seeing at least 4 wins in there, right? So if they can go 4-4, the back end is harder, but they still have the Giants, the Jets twice, and the Falcons in the back half too. If they can at least go 4-4, if they go 5-3, they'll be in a really good spot. But if they can at least go 4-4, then the path to over 8.5 wins is very clear. I give them a rating of 73, and I just have to have a strong lean to that over because there's just so much improvement here. And I don't really like. I do think the Dolphins are going to be better than advertised, but I don't think the Jets are going to be good at all. We'll get to them here soon. And when you have this kind of schedule, right? Vegas, Carolina, the Saints, the Titans, the Browns. There's plenty of openings here, and that's not even including some of these other teams that aren't necessarily very good. Buffalo is going to be a loss, I think, but there's a lot of opportunity here on their schedule to at least position themselves for a playoff spot, and that would be pretty nuts, right? Because you got the AFC West, the AFC North, right? Not so much the AFC South, but are 2 teams going to come out of the AFC East? I think that'd be pretty surprising. I do want to say that it feels like they're trying to duplicate the Bill Belichick era, which is obviously impossible, right? Brady and Belichick, whether they love or hate each other, I mean, they were laughing with each other at Tom Brady's roast, so I guess all is well now. But they're the cream of the crop, right? I mean, Brady is the greatest of all time. You can't have 7 Super Bowls and not be the greatest of all time. Sorry if you don't think that. He just is. And Belichick certainly has a claim too with his own 6. So although this isn't still an improved team, like I'm excited to see how they do. Are they going to be the next Brady and Belichick? I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, right? This is still a very new operation. It's the first season of this operation. What they need, what the essential is great leaders on and off the field. They have it with Mike Vrabel. They have a great play caller with Josh McDaniels. They have continuity on defense with Terrell Williams brought over from Tennessee. They signed some more veteran talent on defense. And now they have a more fortified offensive front. But their offense is still very young, and there's still some signs that there could be still plenty of mistakes there too. Okay, so I'm not betting the over 8.5 just yet, but I strongly like it to the over. I strongly lean in that direction. And I will say, I think this is going to be a great ATS team, a team that covers the spread more than it doesn't this season. We saw Vrabel do that with many of his Tennessee teams over the years. And again, talent limited Tennessee teams, and they still covered the spread better than most programs during his tenure. With that, exciting stuff for the Patriots. Things are on the up. I wouldn't say they're going to the Super Bowl just yet, but things are definitely on the up. And I'm excited to see what Vrabel does over there. We are hitting 14 minutes now, which is our longest team preview yet. So with that, next up is the New Orleans Saints.